Juan Jose Rodriguez on the Transition Podcast today, and I want to thank you for coming down from Tampa.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. So, I'm actually excited to have you on the podcast because you're a former athlete. Mm-hmm. You and your brothers are all former big dudes, athletes, and you were one of the first ones to start your transition while you were at University of Auburn. Yeah, I'll let you talk about that. But now you are, I call you an agent for gamers. Maybe I'm hyping you up right now, but I know that you have a passion for gaming, and I can't wait to talk about that.
Yeah.
But you saw an opportunity, you had a vision, and I'm super proud of where you're going and where you're heading. So talk a little bit about Juan Jose, where you were born, where you went to school, and just a little bit about you.
Yeah, so born and raised in Gainesville, Florida. Came down to Miami, I feel like, once or twice a year to visit you guys when we were younger. But born and raised there, very slim. Like, I remember some childhood memories growing up in Gainesville, but most of my, I feel like, growth and rural growing up was in Huntsville, Alabama. So moved to Huntsville, I think, when I was like 8 or 9, because my dad got a job up there. Mm-hmm. And so, which was weird because we, packed up all our stuff from Gainesville. We had a lot of friends, a lot of family, you guys being down here. And went to Huntsville, Alabama, which I don't know that my parents ever imagined living in Alabama, both being immigrants from Cuba and all that. I don't know that was really on their mind. But moved up there, and then that's kind of like where I feel like I grew a lot. Obviously, a lot of good friends still there. Went to high school there, played basketball, then went to Auburn. We can get in the nitty-gritty however much you want to, whatever phases of life you want to. But just kind of long story short, went to Auburn University, graduated my degree in accounting, had a really fun time while I was at Auburn. I
bet you did.
Met Victoria there, which is my wife for anybody listening. So, obviously a good time when you meet your person there. So it was a good school, good time. And then after going to Auburn, getting my degree, moved down to Tampa, Florida, which is where we're at now. We can kind of, I don't know how you want to chop it up. There's a lot of different phases, a lot of different things. I'll talk about whichever ways you want to go. But.
So you played basketball in high school.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What high school did you go to in Huntsville?
Yeah, so I went to Randolph. It was a private school up in Huntsville, Alabama.
Okay.
It was one of the, I don't know what it is now because I haven't looked at the numbers, but it was a very, I think, upper class high school in not just Huntsville but the state.
Okay.
Very predominant, like high, achievers, things like that. So I can get into the story of how I got to Randolph if you want, and
I want to know about that.
How we got there. So, like I said, we moved to Huntsville when I was like 10, and then basketball had kind of always, I think, since I was like 4 or 5, kind of was just my thing. It was like kind of my escape route. It was a huge part of my life growing up.
You were definitely better than Christopher, right?
No.
I think you were.
I don't think so. I think Chris has me beat, but I was, so when we got to Huntsville, I did 1 year public school, which was different for me because growing up in Gainesville, we were homeschooled like most of our life.
I know that, and I know Tia really enjoyed homeschooling you, and was that was going from homeschooling to actual, we'll call it real school? Yeah. Was that challenging for you?
I liked it, to be honest. Yeah, I liked it. I've always feel like I've been a very social person. I like interacting with people. I like being around people. So I liked going to school. And so 5th grade, I think, or 6th grade, I'm sorry, is when I went to school in Huntsville. It was the first public school I've been to. I did 1 year private school in Gainesville. And so we did the 1 year public school at Mountain Gap Middle School or whatever it was. And then we went back to homeschooling. Except when we went back to homeschooling, since we were a little bit older, there was like a covering you could be under as a homeschooler. And so it's called CCA, which was like Covenant Christian Academy. Okay. And so they had a basketball team. And so grew up 7th grade playing there, did pretty well. I feel like I was a better player on the team at that time in 7th grade. And it was kind of at the point, when you get to that age, you're like 13, 14, you start thinking more about like, okay, do I want to do this in college? Do I want to do this as a career? And so I played that 7th grade year there. It was when I had met one of my best friends now, Zach Bogardis. I had been there my 6th grade year. My 7th grade years got a little bit more competitive, and played 7th grade year there. And so when I got to Randolph, basically how that happened was during my 8th grade year, I was playing on the middle school team, but then also I had been pulled up to play on the varsity team as an 8th grade and a 9th grader. And again, a little bit less competitive since it was under a homeschool covering, and the other teams you were playing were like Christian schools and not as big, like 7A schools. But I felt like we're still excelling pretty well on the court. And so in 8th grade year, we kind of made a decision for not only myself, but for Jordan, my younger brother, that maybe if we really did want to play college hoops, that, being at a homeschool covering wasn't the best thing. And so during that time, I was playing a lot of travel ball, and I had a friend of mine who is still a great friend of mine, Trey Tipton. I was playing on their AAU team. And it was a very competitive AAU team. Yeah. I'll say that I'll say that we did very well, basically. Okay. And he had gone to Randolph. And so again, Randolph was the private school, and he was there. I was doing pretty well on the AAU team, which is just travel ball. And he and his dad came to me, and they came to my family, and they were like, hey, maybe you guys should consider going to Randolph. Like, Trey is there. Obviously Trey wanted to play college hoops too. He did. He wanted to play D1 basketball. And so long story short, we arrive at Randolph. And that, I think, was a little uncomfortable for me compared to just regular public school.
Why is that?
So like I said, it was a very high achieving school. It was a private school. It was really, I mean, just to call it what it is, it was for wealthy families, which my family did okay, right? But we weren't wealthy family. And so we got there, basically I got there and Jordan was able to go there because we got scholarships.
Got it.
And so the school saw us. We had good referrals through word of mouth, again, through kind of playing travel ball. And they're like, okay, well, if you want to come here, we have scholarships we can offer if, you can't pay the tuition cost, which was a very high cost. And so we took a test, and we basically had to pass the test. We met the basketball coaches there. They really liked Jordan and I. Jordan was a little bit younger. I was entering my sophomore year. Okay. And so yeah, we get to Randolph, we join, and it's just a
Were you enjoying a package deal?
I kind of feel like we were. I don't think it was meant to be like that. But Jordan at the time, to just give people context, I think Jordan at the time he was a big kid for his 8th grade year. And I think Jordan at that time was probably already 6'3", probably 200 pounds or something like that. I don't know exact.
Jordan is a big kid.
Yeah. I was pretty much the same size I am right now. So I'm about 6'2". I think I was 150. So I was pretty light when I got there. I put on weight after through weight training and all that. But I was pretty light when I got there. But I was pretty athletic, I guess, for my age. So yeah, I kind of feel like they took us as brothers, and they kind of saw something as maybe they could elevate. And I guess to give context, take a step back, Randolph had been growing their basketball. So the year before we arrived there, they had made a pretty good playoff run.
Nice.
And so we saw that, and we were like, okay, well, this is a step up from homeschooling. They're competing at a pretty good level in their division. I think they were a 4A school at the time. And we're like, yeah, we'll go there. Jordan will eventually make it to the high school team. I'll be on the high school team. Trey was there. And we'll build something. And we wanted to be a powerhouse was basically how we looked at it.
Nice.
So yeah, I know I'm kind of rambling, but yeah,
that's
kind of how we got to Randolph.
So the Rodriguez Cuban kids in Bama.
Yeah.
I love it. We were at Jordan's wedding, and it was it was awesome.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
So you go to Randolph, you're playing basketball.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When you enter your senior year, is basketball still is college basketball still in your mind? Is that still a real thought, or
There's a lot of story leading up to senior year, but basically it wasn't.
Got it.
So when I got to senior year, and again, you let me know how much you want to dive into different parts because you're the host, but by the time I got to my senior year, and this might be fast forwarding, we can step back if you want to, but Jordan had transferred out.
Okay.
Trey had transferred out. My other close friend Pedram transferred out midway through my senior season.
So you're the last Cuban standing.
Yeah, as you can see, there's kind of a trend here that everything that we kind of had high hopes for and had kind of a dream for when I got there my sophomore year had very quickly fallen apart 2 years later. So college ball was still kind of like on my mind. I knew that if I was going to play college ball, I would have had to have gone to like a D2 school. And that was kind of like where I was at mentally. But I actually entered my senior season not playing at Randolph.
Wow.
And yeah, so we can, let's talk about that as much as you want. But yeah, so I entered senior season. I was not even on the team.
Really?
Yeah. So I had kind of mentally through what we had gone through those 2 years.
That to me is transition. So you play your junior year. Your senior, your brother transfers. Your friends transfer. You are at Randolph now in some way alone, right? Yeah. You're not playing basketball. So your transition starts a little earlier.
It started, I'd say the transition of my life, which is ironically when my anxiety was like at its highest, was probably the end of my junior year. Because to provide a little bit more of the story, at the end of our junior year, I had suffered a bad ankle injury in January during a homecoming game. I had a really bad high ankle sprain, and so I was out for about 2 months. And we entered the playoffs that year. I had come back probably like a couple games before the playoffs. And we thought we would make a pretty good run, and I think we lost in like the second round of our area. And so when we lost, there was kind of things happening behind the scenes that kind of made everything fall apart. There was a bit of politics, as there is in all sports, especially at a wealthy school where people have money and things like that. But basically, I remember Trey, and again, that was my close friend that went on to play D1 basketball, very talented. I remember him coming up to me in between a class, and he was like, hey, like, I just want you to hear it from me first because, we were boys. He was like, I'm not coming back next season. And, for him, he had sat out a year to be there. His parents had, like, put him there because that's where they felt like he could shine. And he's like, hey, like, I'm not going to be here next year. So I just wanted you to hear it from me and, not to hear it, like, at a team meeting. And that's kind of when it started to crumble. So then he announced he was leaving. And then I announced that, I basically didn't want to play in the summer because of all the things going on. That led to Jordan leaving that summer. So my transition, I feel like, and my anxiety really started like that summer entering my senior year because I knew I wasn't going to play basketball. I knew that a lot of the people that I was close with and kind of had as family at the school were leaving. And again, I got there my sophomore year. So like a lot of these kids had gone to school together since they were like in kindergarten. So everyone had their cliques. Everybody was like best friends with who were their best friends with. So yeah. That's definitely, I think, when the transition started.
Yeah, and look, we're all going through transition. I mean, the only thing that's constant is change. You used the word anxiety twice, and I heard that. Was your anxiety due to the fear of the unknown, of maybe where your mind was at and where your heart was at are two different places?
Yeah. I think
and the fact of maybe that you were afraid of the unknown?
I think it was the unknown because I think basketball was kind of like, my faith in God at that time I think was like up and down kind of. Like it's not as, like now it's like it's very part of who I am. Like my faith in God is what keeps me stable. But I think at that time it wasn't as strong. And so I think I leaned more and had my rock more in basketball. And it's kind of like that's how I had my identity. And when I talked to people, it was mainly always the conversation was about basketball. So when that went away and then people that were very close to me went away, even though, we're just talking about high school here and looking back, it's like, that's such a small part of your life. At that moment, it was just like a lot of like, I didn't know what was next. And when we had gone to Randolph, my parents basically were like, hey, like if we pay the bit that they needed to still pay for us to go there, this is going to basically be like your college money. So if you go here, we're not going to be able to fund like you need to get a scholarship is basically like what the deal was. And so then I knew that was kind of like getting out of reach. And so then I was like, oh, shoot, well, when I graduate next year, like, what am I going to do? Like, what's the next move?
No, you mentioned your faith in God, and I think sometimes there's, and I say this carefully, I think sometimes there's people have this misconception of like, well, if I'm suffering from, some sort of stress or, anxiety, whatever they call it, that there's a lack of faith of God. And I don't necessarily always think there's a lack of faith in God. I think sometimes there's a will and there's a drive in a human being. And in our human nature, I think we're on this earth, right? And we're still flesh and we're still not, we still have, we're here, right? And I do believe that sometimes we confuse we don't give ourselves enough credit by thinking that we don't have faith. Actually, I think you had amazing faith.
Yeah.
Because the fact that you even were able to hang in there and go through that, and at a young age, you know, and then start to really understand, okay, where's my life going? It proves that you do have faith.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, I think where I think that people, and I guess I can say this now at 40, right? Maybe I think our emotional intelligence begins to mature as we get older and through experience and through whatnot. But when you're younger, you know, some of these challenges are very normal.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things I've realized is that when you start talking about these things, I had a buddy of mine who's a Jewish psychologist who told me, you know, Fernie, you're pretty boring. Like what you're going through is not like uncommon, right? And it's like, it made sense. He's like, tell me, dude, what you're going through is normal.
Yeah.
Right? Like this is a part of the human experience.
Yeah.
So, anyhow, I just thought I bring that up because I do think that your faith is really what kept you through there. You know, your faith in not only in God, but in faith in yourself. And I think that God wants you to have faith in yourself.
Yeah.
And your confidence level. And I do believe that sometimes, you know, our confidence levels are challenged, depending on what experiences we're on. But, so we're in Auburn. You get to Auburn. Mm-hmm. You're not playing basketball. Mm-mm. Did you ever think about walking on?
I did. And it was kind of like the senior year, basically to wrap up that senior year, I ended up playing midway through. I came back and there was a new coach, and I was like, sure, like I'll give this a shot. Eventually, basically, I was like, this is stupid of me. Like, you know, this is what I grew up doing. Like, I should finish what I started. And that kind of like was my mentality. And so that second half of that season, I came back and started playing again. And it was like an even worse bomb that went off. And basically, I didn't finish the season. And looking back, like, that's probably the only time in my life that I felt like I truly quit on something. And I feel like I hold that to myself a couple times. There's not really anything I can look back on and say that I truly kind of quit and put behind me.
Why do you feel that way?
I feel like I wasn't...
Think of a word that makes you think that you quit. Why?
I feel like I didn't have the mental strength back then to just finish. And I think my mental game, obviously, as you grow older, gets better, right? But
for some people who choose it.
Yeah.
For some people, it doesn't.
True. Fair. It's true. But I think I had a weak mental game back then. And I let things get under my skin too much easier. And you know, I still struggle. We're all human. But
yeah.
I think I could have. I think if the Juan now went back to that senior, and again, that's easy to say 7 years later, but I think I would have finished.
I think your perspective would have been different.
Yeah.
I think your perspective would have allowed you to finish. Mm-hmm. So the things that would have nagged at you, wouldn't nag at you today.
Correct.
Right? You just be like, I'm not going to allow that to bother me.
Yeah.
And I think we all go through that.
Yeah.
But so you're at Auburn, you try to walk on. You think about walking on, you don't walk on.
I don't. Yeah, I thought about it almost started because actually the apartment building I lived in my first year at Auburn, there was a kid there that was actually from Huntsville as well.
Okay.
And he had played pretty well at Grissom High School, which is one of the bigger high schools, a 6A high school there, which has always been a pretty competitive basketball high school in Alabama, especially in Huntsville. And he lived in my building. And so he played at Grissom, and he was kind of one of those kids in school that just decided he didn't want to play college basketball because of the commitment when he got older. But he scrimmaged a lot with the girls' team of the Auburn women's basketball team. And I almost started going to those, and when he brought that up, that's kind of when it re-sparked to me, like, should I just walk on for the sake of walking on? And, you know, I could, even if I just sit the bench, like, I could still get a college experience, and at Auburn, that's a huge, you know, school.
Big school.
It would be fun. And it just, I didn't get to it. I think I just kind of, like, told myself it was behind me. I wanted to, like, focus on my academics. I had really never focused on my academics in high school because I was always focused on basketball. And I knew that even though I wanted to walk on, like, that's not what was going to keep me there. I knew that with, like, my situation, I had to keep my grades up. I had to, you know, perform decently well. And I knew that it was going to be a commitment to still even be a walk-on with the practices and all that. And so, yeah, just long story short, I ended up not trying to walk on, but I did wrestle with it for probably a few weeks, deciding, like, hey, is this something I should do or is this something I should not do? And I just decided not to. So.
And then you become an accountant. Now you're an accountant.
Yeah, then I want to become an accountant. So
that's amazing. So obviously you've been very successful, and you've achieved what you wanted to do, which again proves the faith that you have not only in God but in yourself.
Yeah.
And so now let's get into the fun stuff.
Yeah.
So now you're an accountant. Mm-hmm. Well, take it real quick. You meet Victoria at Auburn.
I do. Yeah. So
Victoria's here.
Victoria's in the building.
So you meet Victoria. Mm-hmm. You end up marrying Victoria.
I do. Yeah.
And you just finally became an official CPA, right?
I just became a CPA a few months ago. Yeah.
Okay.
Officially.
And now you're doing one of the coolest things in the world. I think it's actually pretty cool. Now, you are, I'm going to describe what I think you are, and then you're going to correct me.
Go for it.
I look at you as a Jerry Maguire of gamers, dude. You're the agent. You're gonna represent gamers. Mm-hmm. So I know there's more to what you do. Explain to me what you're doing now, and because that's actually really cool.
Yeah. So back in, I'd say in 2018. Basically Victoria and I met at Auburn. She very quickly just kind of became my person, like I just couldn't get enough of each other, that whole lovey-dovey stuff. And proposed to her entering our last semester at Auburn. We just decided like, okay, what do we want to do next? Where we want to go? And so I had an internship opportunity pop up in Tampa, for a small private accounting firm there. So I went and interned in 2018. So the reason that's important for my personal story is while I was in Tampa during 2018 and that summer, I was by myself interning just for 3 months. I think it was from like May to August. And so I obviously had like a lot of alone time. I'd go to work, do the internship, I'd come back, move to a city where I didn't know anybody. So it's not like I had people to go do stuff with. And so during that summer is when I first found Twitch. And so for people that don't know what Twitch is, it's basically like a website where you can stream your gameplay, you can do a podcast, you can have like a cooking show. I mean, it's basically just broadcasting, people on camera, doing all sorts of different things.
You can have a podcast on Twitch?
Yeah. So you can live Twitch.
Why am I not on Twitch? What's up, man?
So I've streamed some of my podcast episodes on Twitch. But basically I discovered Twitch. And so it's funny looking back at it now because now I'm so familiar with what it is.
Go ahead.
But I didn't know what it was. And so I discovered Twitch and I'm like, man, this is like pretty cool. And so I started playing with it that summer. That introduced me to, this was when Fortnite at the time was like very, very popular. And so I started watching Fortnite started to come out with competitive events, which competitive video games is AKA known as esports. Yeah. And so Fortnite was kind of the first in their competitive scene and their esports route is when I first kind of found all this. And so I got really into it. And, long story short, to fast forward, I went through that last semester of 2018 at Auburn. And I was really into Twitch and kind of watching people and playing video games. And I liked Fortnite. And so like at a local bar there, I won like a couple $100 like playing Fortnite at the local bar.
By yourself?
Yeah. So they had was it Monday nights, I think? Yeah, Monday nights.
A beer in one hand and
yeah, so actually if you...
Are you listening to this, Tia?
So actually if you got like certain eliminations and you did something, they would actually like give you a drink to try to slow down the best person there. And so, that's kind of how they would stabilize it. But I won a couple $100 doing that. So graduated and we just decided like...
And did you game in college?
Mm-mm. Other than that, I won like those couple $100. I wasn't great, but like I was better than your average person. I couldn't play professionally or anything, but I did that. And so then she visited me down in Tampa during that summer. She loved it, and we were like, okay, well, let's just move to Tampa. Wow. And so when I went back to my last semester at Auburn, I then got recruited by EY, which is Ernst & Young, Big Four public accounting firm. And so in January of 2019, I interned with them from January to March. And so after March ended, I was in Tampa. I had like officially moved, like I was there. She was finishing up school. And so for those that don't know, like in the accounting route, if you're going like Big Four and you're trying to get your CPA, you have to get your undergraduate degree, and then you have to go on to get other educational credits or your master's. And so if I had stayed with EY, which I ended up doing for a bit, you basically had a 1.5 year break between interning and then being with them full time. And so I finished interning, and then that summer I started rolling like in summer classes to do my extra educational credits. And that's kind of like when Lodges was birthed.
Yeah.
Because I had been following Twitch, I had been following kind of esports a bit. And
now, not to cut you off,
Yeah.
Lodge Financial is Juan's company.
Yes, correct. And I was like, man, is there anyone representing talent or streamers or content creators or the pro
One last
players?
thing.
Yeah.
Why'd you name it Lodge?
So this is like
Not to cut you off, but I want
very random,
Okay.
and it's not anything super exciting. So basically, I went and I had just got a newer car at the end of right before moving to Tampa.
Okay.
And I had to go get the plate for it in Tampa because I was now a resident. So I had to get my license and all that. And so I go in there, do the whole thing. And I wanted a Miami Heat plate. Like, I'm a huge Miami Heat fan. And so I always wanted to be able to live in Florida so I could have the Miami Heat plate.
Got it.
And so I bought the Miami Heat plate, and I was just like, hey, yeah, can I get the Vice Miami? And he was like, sure. And so he hands it to me, and it says Lodges spelled with a 0. And it looked like a custom plate. And I was like, no, I didn't want a custom plate. Like, I just want the regular Miami plate. And he's like, no, this is one. And I was like, oh, okay, it just looks like kind of custom. He's like, no, it's not. And I was like, okay. So I put that plate on my car. I sent it on Snapchat to like friends that night, and they were like, that's a sick name. And I was like,
It's a pretty cool name. That's what I'm asking.
yeah. And I was like, this is very weird, but I was like, whatever. It kind of stuck. So that was about 3 months before I officially decided to start the business. And so when I started the business during the summer of 2019, I was like talking to Victoria, and I was like, what should I name this company? Like, I'm not good at naming. Like, I have no idea. And I randomly just thought, well, everyone thought Lodges sounded cool, and it doesn't really signify anything, but it's a name. And I didn't, entering gaming and knowing there's a lot of youth that are in it and very young talent, I didn't want something that was too corporate, and I didn't want something that sounded boring. Like, I wanted something that sounded modern, and I wanted something that sounded different. And so I was like, well, what if we just flip the 0 and we make it an O and just call it Lodges Financial, to obviously signify that there's financial services.
That's actually a really cool story. I think it's a really cool story.
Yeah, so
That's pretty sick.
that's how the name Lodges came about.
That's amazing.
So yeah.
So now, this is, I find this, the reason why this is intriguing to me is because obviously, my sports background, our family sports background, like we love sports. But you've been a person who's opened me up to understanding that gaming is a sport. And I've struggled to, I don't want to say understand that, but like try to I guess in somewhat understand what gaming is. But the last time you were here and you were doing your podcast with the gentleman from the Heat, remember?
The Heat Check game, yeah, famous.
You said you talked to me about how these guys are competing, and how they're competitors. And it's funny because I see it, like you see it in kids, you see it with in my kids and our, my friends' kids, and when they're gaming, they're actually competing. But what's really caught my attention in the last, ever since my kids started playing sports, is I'm not surprised by the fact that gaming's growing tremendously, and we'll get into that. But one of the things that I think I've identified is why I can see kids playing our gaming more is because rec sports is almost becoming ancient, like it's non-existent. There's a lot of travel ball teams, and there's a lot of specialization and expertise in sports nowadays.
Yeah.
So that by I don't know if it's by design, but by the process of elimination, it actually eliminates your rec ball kid who just wants to play for fun. But guess what? He's 7, 8 years old, and he's being cut from a coach pitch baseball team or a basketball team or some sort of put together flag football team or whatnot.
Yeah.
So which to me is sad. And then I also see coaches and organizations that have lost their minds with how they create this environment that's just not sustainable and healthy for a children's mindset who's just trying to play, again, a sport for the fun of it. So I don't think it's a coincidence that gaming is growing. And I think those two factors are huge. You have rec ball's gone, so that eliminates kids. And then you have parents and coaches that don't do a good job of keeping these kids around in the game. I think some kids are being burnt out, Juan.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to bring in a third factor, and then I want you to go off on, talk to me about this and see if you agree or not. I would like to know how much COVID may have had an influence in gaming while, fields and sports facilities were closed in the last year. So what are your thoughts on that? I mean, that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
What are you seeing?
Yeah. So back in 2018, when I first kind of uncovered all this, I think COVID definitely elevated the spotlight a bit, right? So prior to COVID, I still think there was, especially like in the last 3 to 5 years, a very big shift in kind of like normalizing gaming a little bit more, the competitive scene growing, leagues being established, money prize pools getting higher. So that was all there leading into COVID. I think COVID just kind of like put a bigger spotlight on it. Because you didn't have your regular sports and
exposed
kids were
it
home,
more.
It exposed it more. So, and obviously when you expose something more, you put a spotlight on it more, then yes, naturally it does help it grow a little bit more. But I do think it was there even prior to COVID. But I mean, I think what you can look at with youth and playing video games, even if they're not playing competitively, right? Like you and I, we grew up with video games, but it wasn't like it is now. And what I mean by that is like, a lot of younger kids, they'll hop on there and they can play with their friends that are anywhere, right? And if, like, for example, a lot of parents will like act like it's just a game, right? And so they'll come in and they'll be like, oh, dinner's ready. And they'll just interrupt them in the game, and the kid will be like, no, we're in a live match. But the parents don't understand what that means. And so they'll be like, no, like, you got to pause it. And the kids, of course, trying to explain, like, no, mom, dad, like, there's no way to pause it. Like, we're in it.
Something my dad would do.
Yeah. And so, like, the best example to that is, like, imagine you're out in the baseball game, right? You're just playing a pickup basketball game, baseball game with your friends and your buddies, and your parents just come as you guys are 10 minutes away from finishing, and they're like, yo, it's done. It's dinner time. A parent wouldn't do that, right? Because we understand and naturally that they're playing a basketball game, like they're finishing this game with their friends. But in video games, because it's digital and because the old school nature is like thinking that you can just pause the game, parents just want to like stop it. But that's like how a lot of kids these days are like having what the memories that we did growing up playing basketball, playing baseball, playing whatever sport you were. And for a lot of them, it's a mix. Like they can still be like you're seeing a lot of crossover between traditional sports and gaming where you have a lot of pro athletes that and I mean like we did, right? Where we grew up playing sports. But I remember going to AAU tournaments and someone always had a PlayStation. Someone always had an Xbox.
Yeah.
So we would
travel in the
yeah. So you play your sport, but then at night at the hotel room, it's who had the Xbox, and everyone will go to that person's room. And so it was kind of always a part of it. But I think that, yeah, COVID definitely like helped kind of like put the spotlight on it. I don't pay attention too much to rec leagues, but I could believe if you're saying that they're kind of diminishing a bit, I would believe that.
What I mean by rec leagues is like, I mean, I don't know how, again, I'm speaking in my backyard. Mm-hmm. I don't know how it is in Alabama. But like in Miami, and I'll just like baseball or soccer and whatnot.
Yeah.
Those are two sports that my son and my daughter plays soccer, and Sean plays both baseball and soccer. But most of it is travel team. Like there's some availability for rec ball, but it's very limited to say the least. And it's all travel team. It's all handpicked teams from the ages, from 6U down up. Mm-hmm. And it stops kids from playing because there are some kids who aren't as talented as other kids, but they want to play for fun and they want to have a good time. Well, guess what? That kid doesn't have an opportunity anymore because of the way the system is just set up here. So I can see why kids are just obviously playing gaming more. Because you want to compete, you want to do something. Well, I'll just game. But I really believe from the bottom of my heart that it's also a fact that some kids rather game because they don't have their mom or their dad or some coach yelling at them and making them feel putting all that stress on them, in Little League. Yeah. And they just rather, compete by themselves and not have to deal with that. I think subconsciously you're seeing that happen. And then I think there's also the fact that gaming's fun. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not saying it's a negative. I'm just saying I can see how I actually think it can help. No, absolutely. The sport. Gaming is obviously fun. I mean, when I was a kid, I wanted to play John Madden, MLB, what was NBA Jams. I mean, I could go back to Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat. That was all fun. It was a good time. Mm-hmm. But I never thought of it as like, you know what, I don't want to pay for this coach, so let me go do that. But kids are actually doing that nowadays. And you ask kids, and they're they're going to tell you.
Yeah.
And now with gaming becoming such a popular sport, arenas being built, and I also think that gaming evolved. Like when we played, I didn't remember having the capabilities of like calling Juan and Johnny and like, hey, we're gonna go live at 9:00 tonight, and like, you know, the evolution
Technology
of gaming is
evolved.
just technology is unbelievable. And technology has evolved everything.
Yeah.
So, where do you see the future of gaming going?
I mean, I just think it'll continue to. People love to ask me that question. I don't know that I specifically have a very like specific example of where I think it'll go, but I think it will just continue to normalize more. I think it will continue to grow more. You know, you can read lots of articles out there and statistics about like, oh, esports will overtake the NHL by, you know, next year or something like that. But, you know, the thing to kind of take away, and I guess to maybe provide just general education for anyone listening that doesn't really understand what esports is, it's like when you see a lot of those articles, sometimes it is a little bit overhyped and it's headed the right direction. But esports, like the NBA 2K League, right, is a esport. And what I mean by that is NBA 2K is a game, and NBA 2K League, which is run by the NBA, is a league that you can play as a pro esports player. You could play as a pro esports player for Call of Duty. You could play Overwatch. You could play lots of other things, right? So when these articles say esports, it's kind of like doing a catch-all, and really the reality is that some esports are bigger than others. The industry is constantly evolving, right? So like tomorrow a new game could drop that could create a whole new esport. Right. So esports is not just one thing, which is kind of like the common misconception. But I think that, you know, the future is you'll see more games come out. You'll see some leagues continue to grow their prize pools, kind of become the traditional esports maybe. But
there's a lot of money involved in esports nowadays, right?
And a lot of money. The prize pools go up depending on what game, like Call of Duty for Warzone, which is traditionally just a free-to-play game. Like they just announced like this week a esports track for it, which is like $1.2 million in total prize pool. Wow. You know, Victoria and I attended the Fortnite World Cup in 2019, which over that weekend they gave away total, I think it was $36 million.
$36 million.
Yeah. So between like everything that went on that weekend, so it was a 3-day event. But I think something that is kind of, you know, we think video games traditionally, right? But I always tell people that I think that they don't realize how many skills can come from gaming. And the good example I like to give is like, you know, we always talk about how athletes make great people in business, right? Because they know how to communicate, they know how to work as a team, they know how to, you know, have dedication and all that sort of thing. But I always talk about gaming, like, I mean, you talk about being a good communicator. You know, imagine basically playing baseball, but if you couldn't, like, basically, if you're playing a video game, you got to be super communicative, right? Like, if you and I are on a game, I got to tell you where everything that I'm seeing, you got to tell me everything you're seeing, or if not, you just won't succeed. And it's the same way in baseball, except the difference is you can do a lot of nonverbal gestures in traditional sports. Like, if I'm playing basketball and I want you to cut, I don't have to say, Fernie, cut. Like, I can look at you and and we can build that chemistry as a player. But in esports, everyone's looking at their own screen. There is no looking at your teammate and being like, hey, move this way or hey, move that way. It's all verbal. And so there's a lot of communication skills that I think can be built from pro players. And we'll see over time. It's so early that, you know, we don't really know yet. We know for a traditional athlete, like you could go play in the NBA for 10 years. Then you could go broadcast for a few years, or you could go be a GM, or you can go do whatever. We haven't really seen, because esports is kind of just hitting such a stride, we haven't really seen like post-career for a lot of pro players. So like we don't really know what a post-career looks like for an esports player. For some, it'll be just streaming and content creation. For some, it will be broadcasting. But it'll be exciting to kind of see like what avenues are available. And I think there's a lot of skills being built. It's just how will those skills be applied to future jobs.
I think it's amazing how they have this crazy hand-eye coordination. The fact that you can like think and move with your hands,
right?
Like, it's pretty unique and pretty cool,
right?
Would you agree, Johnny? Because I know that you love playing. I know Louis does too, and my brother-in-law, and they're so passionate about it. And they were showing me a video the other days. Louis was in my house, and he was showing me a video of one of his friends playing World
of Warcraft.
Yeah, and he was beating like one of the best dudes. You know what I'm talking about? But I mean, look, we're living in the modern world. EA Sports is here. It's not going nowhere. I know for a fact that banks are financing stadiums and they're going to have, facilities and venues for these events, which I believe is awesome, which is, proving that it's here. Like this is and I think it's going to give kids an opportunity. I think it's going to create jobs. I think it's going to create a lot of positive things. So I'm excited about it. Yeah. Obviously, for me, it's a little bit newer, but I'm really into it because I know that, you were so excited about it, and I never looked at it in that way. Yeah. And then I started, after you went back, after you visited Miami,
last
year.
Yeah.
I started doing my own little research and becoming more aware of it. I think Juan was the key, and I think it's awesome, man. So you. Not only, I know that you game for fun and all that, but now
every now and then.
You found a huge niche. You said, dude, there's gamers, there's contract certainty people need, there's money in the game. You're an accountant, and you saw an opportunity to become an agent. Mm-hmm. So I call you an agent.
You call me, I know.
I call you an agent. Are you? Let me ask you, do you have to have a certification to become a certified agent for EA Sports like you would in MLB? Or
so
you have to be an attorney.
There's not, so like what you'll see a lot of is so I'm a CPA, so I'm not you could think of me kind of as an agent because there are some services that I provide that are very similar to like an agent in traditional sports, right, that aren't really financially related, but I kind of assist with, but that's not the bread and butter of it. But what you'll see a lot of right now is really attorneys are kind of acting in that role as an agent, to the best of my knowledge. I don't know, Johnny, if you know, but I don't think they're like obviously with the MLB, like you can be a agent for the MLB and you have to like pass whatever you have to pass and pay whatever you have to pay. I don't believe that exists right now in esports. I could be totally wrong if I haven't looked that up right, but you'll see a lot of attorneys acting on behalf of talent. So whether that's contract reviews, contract negotiations, working a lot of the marketing. You'll see a lot of lawyers act like kind of in the sponsorship and partnership roles where they'll kind of make those deals happen. Like I have a really good friend that is an attorney, and he's the director of Ford Models. So like Ford Models Agency, which was traditionally a modeling agency, now has a esports division, and he's the head of it. And so he's an attorney in New York, but he basically cuts a lot of like the partnership and sponsorship deals for talent. Given that he's got the relationships, there's a lot of like endemic brands, which are like, gaming brands. Then you have the non-endemic brands, which are outside of gaming, but he basically helps cut those deals. So you'll see attorneys do that. And then my role as a CPA, which you don't see many of, there's only like 2 others that I know off the top of my head that really do it, right? You have a lot of people that like, I think try to say that they have like a gaming division or they have an esports division, but like you can kind of tell on surface level that, and I'm not dogging them, but I can just tell that you don't have clients because you wouldn't be saying the things you're saying on your website if I knew you actually had clients. But so there's not many CPAs, and that's where the opportunity was. But yeah, so you'll see a lot of attorneys really acting in those roles right now, and then you'll have managers at teams that don't have any kind of like certification, but they just grew up in gaming and know it. So
what exact services are you providing for gamers?
Mm-hmm. So I provide, as a CPA, I do taxes, obviously, tax planning throughout the year.
Do they have an entertainment tax that's just like a regular athlete? Meaning, if they're gaming in Florida, are they in a certain tax bracket versus if they're paying in New York? Are they paying an entertainment tax? So
the JAG tax would, if you're an esports player, like that applies to you. So like if you live in Florida but you go up to New York and you compete in whatever tournament,
I would hate gaming in New York.
Yes, correct. You would love gaming in Florida, Texas.
I got a buddy of mine who plays Major League Baseball. And he said, dude, you get your paycheck in New York, you're playing the Yankees, you think you'd be excited, your paycheck is not what it is in Florida.
Yeah. But that's not, again, a lot of people that's becoming, you got to remember these are younger talents. So that's still very new to the industry to understand like what the heck is even a JAG tax.
Somebody may not even know, right?
Right. Some don't even know.
Services that you're providing.
You got to have the people around you to even understand that applies. Now, I think that once you get to a certain degree as an esports player, you obviously run into it because you're competing at a high enough level to where somebody's going to tell you like, hey, you got to be thinking of this. But starting out, I don't think parents or a 15, 16-year-old kid like are thinking, oh, I have to pay taxes if I go to a state and compete, or I have to pay international taxes if I fly over to Europe and play in an international tournament, right? So
who's your perfect client? Who's the client that should be calling you? What gamer?
I personally like the streaming and content creation side a little bit more. So I think esports is very cool, and I will always kind of have that as a service line. But for me, I like working with the streamer and the content creator talent side more, just because I think there's more longevity in it, so they can do it for a lot longer. There's not as much burnout. I like seeing the creativity of the individual, right? Like they're creating their own original content. It's kind of like the grind and the journey of like building a channel, building content, establishing themselves as talent in the space. So for me, that's the ideal client, is someone that streams on Twitch, on YouTube, on Facebook, wherever, and they're just trying to create a name for themselves and put out content that people enjoy, right? Like this is stuff that people laugh at. This is stuff that like for a lot of people, like they pop into, Nick Merckx is a very popular streamer. Like people pop into Nick Merckx stream every single day, and that's legitimately part of their daily routine. Like that's what brings them joy, just like a TV show might or Sports Center might. Like that's how it is for a lot of people. So
that's somebody's ESPN.
Yes, that is somebody's ESPN. Correct.
Where do you see Lodge Financial in 10 years?
As the CPA firm for gaming, esports, content creation, influencer, digital, like that, all that talent. I want to.
Do you see yourself bringing in attorneys and maybe even solidifying contracts and endorsements for players? Is that a vision as well?
I don't know about attorneys, but definitely bringing in like basically like financial planners or financial like things that I don't do. Like I don't touch investing. Though I help people with like their tax planning strategy and being smart about where we can. Like I don't plan out your life 10 years from now, right? So I think that right now I'm like on the fence. Like I think I want employees down the road, and I think it would be cool to have other divisions that do different things from just what I do as an individual. But then I'm so early on that like I don't really know yet. I think I'll know that answer more as time goes on. But.
So from the outside looking in, I can see Lodge Financial. When I see Lodge Financial, I can see Lodge Financial as a firm
100%
that does taxes for corporate people, individuals, has a division of specialization with gamers.
Yeah, that will always be.
Or do you want it to just be specifically just Lodge Financial? All they do is tax returns and financial services for gamers.
So I think a lot of the reason I've had, and again, I'm still very young in this company. The idea is very young. No, I hear you. But I think what's helped me have the success that I've had so far is how niche I've actually been. And so what I mean by that is just like you have a couple other business management firms, because for a while at the inception of Lodge's Financial, I was like, someone introduced the idea to me of it being a business management firm, which doesn't just do financial services, but maybe we do day-to-day tasks for you. We do a little bit of management for you. And you had a lot of other, and there still are business management firms out there that have a quote-unquote esports sector. But when you're approaching the gaming industry and the talent within it, it's very easy to get exposed, and people want a very specific person. And so when I started the company, I knew that I had to stay like tunnel focused on the industry, because the talent would then recognize that, and they would trust me more. They would understand that, hey, like this isn't like a guy that has a firm and is just trying to make a couple quick bucks off of just this talent. Like this is what he primarily serves. And I think that I had some people ask me, like as I was building, like, are you sure you want to be so niche? Do you really want to be so niche? Like, is that going to limit you? But I think it's actually what's allowed it to get to where it's getting to and where it's going, is because people look at lodges and they're like, okay, like if I'm a streamer, if I'm a content creator, if I'm a YouTuber, like, and that's what I want the basically lodges to look like, is to be like, okay, I want to go to that firm for all of my tax planning strategies, all financial services, things like that.
And I think Lodge will eventually evolve just with time. I mean, it's just part of the nature of the game.
Yeah.
And that's unbelievable. I mean, there's a lot of value add. The fact that you're a gamer, I think makes things a lot more comfortable, because you understand that mindset, you understand how they're thinking, versus your typical tax accountant, right? I mean, you understand their mindset, you understand what they're doing, and that is a huge advantage, and it's probably why you're, the value add that you bring versus any other accountant. I mean, most accountants know how to do a tax return, right? There's a lot more that you bring to the table than just a tax return.
100%.
It's relationship, your trust, you understanding what they're going through emotionally. It's knowing your client.
Yeah.
And I think that's your biggest advantage.
Yeah, there are like some tax nuances, right? Because just like there is in any industry, like you got to know them. And I think in order to identify those tax nuances, you have to understand the industry to a degree. Like you got to understand the revenue streams, you got to understand how they make their living, right? But I think that, listen, I have financial advisors and wealth managers, like you'd be surprised, hit up my LinkedIn messages all the time with, hey, like we would love to service your clients. We would love to do this. We would love to do that. Because a lot of people still just see it as a cash grab because they see all these articles going out, all these headlines going out, and people think there's like millions and millions and millions to be made. When the reality is there's a lot of money going into the industry. There's not a lot of money coming out. But I think it's just, financial literacy for me, like has been core to Lodges. So I've done like a lot of financial literacy content, whether it's articles, videos, on podcasts and stuff like that. I don't see many financial people right now that want to be in gaming bringing any value to the industry. So everyone wants a streaming client. Everyone wants an esports player.
But they want it for the wrong reasons. They want it because they're chasing the money, and they want it for popularity reasons. You want it because it's the same way I love to insure athletes because I'm an athlete at heart.
Right.
So I understand. It's just I can throw batting practice to a guy and sell him insurance. I literally can. Because I can care less about selling him the insurance. I'm more interested in him throwing the guy batting practice. And I want to look after him because I understand who he is and what he or she is going through. And people in gaming, whenever there's money, there's obviously people sometimes being abused and over, paying exaggerated rates or not in tune with what's really going on the surface from a financial perspective. And I think that your passion for the sport makes it so transparent that you care about the gamer and you care about them making money and you care about their future.
Right.
And that's what makes Lodge Financial so special. Yeah.
I mean, listen, you could probably, with an athlete, you understand their lingo, you understand their verbiage, like you understand all those things. And while that's, I always say, because sometimes there is an issue in gaming where like people hire like their parent or their cousin or their best friend to be their accountant or to be their manager or to be their contract reviewer just because they like gaming. And I do try to like put a fence down. I'm like, because that's an issue in gaming just as a niche.
Okay.
And it's like, listen, you two do agree have to hire the right person. It is a value add to have a person that does enjoy the industry and like understands what you do. But a lot of the times I'll see the wrong people in the wrong positions, and it's very evident when you're doing business with someone. But to my point, like you can mesh well with an athlete and provide the insurance services that you do.
Yeah.
And it's the same with me. Like
it's natural.
It's natural. So I'm not sitting there on a call with someone and trying to be like, sounding like I definitely don't know what video games are and stuff. But that's a value add. But it's like you also got to know the business side of it, of course. But
where can people find you? Lodge Financial.
Yeah, you can find. So I'm on a lot of socials. On Twitter, it's just at Lodges. So LODGZ. On Instagram, it's Lodges Financial. You can go to lodgesfinancial.com. So yeah, a lot of different ways to find me.
Nice. So as we wrap this up, I got one last question for you.
Ooh.
You ready?
Let's do it.
What would you tell 18-year-old Juan?
Ooh. To be more patient. To not let little things get under your skin, to just keep going through, which I think I did pretty well as an 18-year-old, but that same advice to just be persistent, just keep going, break through what you need to break through, and to just really not worry about, you gotta worry about the people that are close to you, what they think and what they're telling you, but to not worry about other people. And obviously you gotta be human, you gotta be kind, you gotta be compassionate, all those things, but there's a lot of chirping voices in this world. There's a lot of things you can look at in this world. So I think just listening to the right voices, hearing from the right people, and not letting people outside of that circle really kind of influence you and impact you.
And you're doing it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Appreciate you. Thanks for having me.
Love you, bro.